And we should be live.
Oh, I see Andy's face.
Yeah, you two should be able to see each other. We are currently live on YouTube.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Take a second
Hey.
to get the link and whatnot.
Sure.
But we should be live now.
Since I can't see myself, how is my positioning?
Much better
You're
than
good. Wait, you can't see yourself? I can see myself.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is.
This is fun. So much technology. I've been all week using Zoom.
Yes.
Sammy, you ever use Zoom?
I've never actually used Zoom. Surprisingly.
We gotta find a way to get Zoom live on YouTube because Zoom is nice.
Oh yeah. Super helpful. Do you remember the PBS show Zoom?
Yeah.
No. Gotta remember, I lived under a rock. Still do.
Well, yeah.
I don't know if PBS made it under your rock or not.
I'm actually surprised it didn't.
Actually, PBS was one of the things that was under my rock.
Ah.
I mean, the thing is, it could have been more like my age group, so.
Be right back, guys.
Don't close out of the video.
Yep.
Oh, no, now his face went away. Technology. Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
Currently, we have. All right, Haley is here, and Kendra.
Yay!
I will work on the echoing just so you two know. So give us a minute to work on that.
I can tell a story.
Tell your story, Christina. Tell your story.
So yesterday I was feeling a little rough in all senses, and I was on Facebook, and I joined a group called Chonky Cats.
Chonky or chunky?
It's this internet slang for chunky.
Does it
So I joined a Facebook group that's dedicated to fat cats, and it's just pictures of chunky cats in their homes, and it's just people sharing pictures of their cats and people saying, "Oh, how cute are they?" And they're pretty cute, I will say.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then I invited some people to join the page who I know enjoy some chunky cats.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Hey, Andy, can you put in headphones by chance?
No.
You don't have headphones? Okay.
Correct. Am I the one that is echoing?
Christina's echoing a little bit, and it's because your computer picks up her sound and then feeds it back in. Anyway, so welcome everybody. We are currently going to chat about.
Surprise! I have a question.
I forgot. I'm so sorry. So we're all drinking our tea or our coffee or whatever beverage of choice that we choose. I just have a very plain mug right now. Nothing exciting.
I have. Oh, you go, Andy.
He just shrugs.
Genesee Community College, the place that employs us. So. This is actually a really old mug. My mom's boss who retired. She's the dean of the one of the departments. She was like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff that she gave to me when I moved onto campus. This mug being one of them because it has like the old font and everything. Collector's item. All right.
So what's your question?
Yes. This question could be for both of you or to the audience. But what do Daniel Radcliffe, Whoopi Goldberg, Lady Gaga, Stevie Wonder, Elton John, and Millie Bobby Brown all have in common?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I stumped people with this yesterday in my personal circle. Well, they
Say it again.
okay. What do Daniel Radcliffe, you know, the guy who plays Harry Potter,
Mhm.
Whoopi Goldberg, Lady Gaga, Stevie Wonder, Elton John, and Millie Bobby Brown. She's that girl from Stranger Things, Andy. What do they all have in common?
Well, you say that like I am familiar with Stranger Things. Yeah.
That's okay.
I'm assuming they all have a disability of some sort.
That is true. That's our topic.
Yeah.
They all have a type of disability. So they either have a physical disability or a learning disability, or they deal with like mental health issues. So all of them have grown up or were diagnosed with a disability at some point in their lives. So like Millie Bobby Brown, the little girl actress from Stranger Things, the show that Andy doesn't know, she was born with partial deafness in one ear, but
Really?
she's actually fully deaf in one ear now.
Hmm.
And like Whoopi Goldberg, she is
Whoopi Goldberg.
famous actress. What needs to be said about her? She has an EGOT, an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. But she has dyslexia, and she wasn't diagnosed until an adult. So school for her was really difficult, and she was often considered to be like slow and lazy as she got to like the higher grades, because a lot of the tips and techniques that she used to like make school work for her weren't working in the high school setting. So then she eventually dropped out, but fortunately her mother, who always valued education, had her like go to museums and gave her money to like go to cultural events, so she was still able to continue her education in a way. But like I said, she wasn't diagnosed until she was an adult. So and it's fascinating. So the reason why we're talking about disability is because disability in education is a hot topic, and specifically accommodations are an important topic to learn about in case you ever need an accommodation, or in case you're in the position of being an educator or working any place as a supervisor and you have to provide accommodations. Before I go on to my big spiel, is there anything that you two want to add?
I think that you kind of talked about a really good intro with that. I like it.
Thanks. I'm going to go a little bit into the history, and then I'm going to talk about accommodations that can be done in the online education setting. Mind you, I am not a disability scholar. I did not study it in school. I have taken some classes around it, but I'm not as skilled as other people who specialize in this. So this is all coming from some of my knowledge that I have, and my sisters work in the field, so learning from them. But take everything with a grain of salt. Always double check. Okay, so this is another question. So if you had a disability, whether it was learning or physical, what have you, prior to the 1970s, how did you get educated?
Are you asking us?
Yeah, or the audience. I don't care.
A lot of times, so I'm not sure where you're gonna go with this, but sorry, Andy.
The question is, before the 1970s, how did one get educated?
Mhm.
If they had a disability.
My guess is that they didn't really, in any traditional or formal way. Colleges weren't friendly to wheelchairs, and learning disabilities were not really considered that much in higher ed. So it would have had to be self-teaching or like a private tutoring.
Yeah, private tutoring was mostly the main form if you had the money for a private tutor. So if you were rich enough, you could have a governess, a tutor, and they could teach you in like K through 12, that type of setting. College was definitely a harder area to access because they didn't have the systems that were set up in order to allow people to be reasonably accommodated. However, Helen Keller, so a woman who is famous for being a political activist around disability, author, speaker, she was born, well, not born, she developed both deafness and blindness at a young age. And she worked with this one particular woman teacher named Anne Sullivan, who helped her learn how to read essentially, and like taught her braille and everything. But Helen Keller is I think what they said is she's the first person with like a major disability to get a bachelor's degree, and she got it from Radcliffe, which is a fancy university. But if her family didn't have the money to get that private tutor, what were they supposed to do? You know. So until the 1970s, like I said, if you were middle class or poor and you could not afford a tutor or a private educator, then basically you stayed at home and it was just the family's responsibility to educate, or they just didn't do it in the first place. So then the 1970s were like a time of a lot of different cultural and social changes, specifically around disability. And they said that there's a specific law, I'm not going to say the whole name, but they said that all children, regardless of disability, deserve a public education in K through 12. So starting in like the mid 1970s, when that law was passed at the federal level, that's when anyone with a disability was then put into a traditional K through 12 setting. They may have been in a separate classroom, but they were still in school. And that was like the first time that it was mandated that they had to do this. Which it seems crazy that it was not that long ago. Like the 70s, yeah, it's before I was born, but at the same time, like my mom was in high school and my dad was in high school. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And then in more disability history, it wasn't until 1990 that another law was passed that wasn't just in the educational setting, but in all public settings, called the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that one is a game changer because it allowed people who were often stuck in their own homes to be able to go out into the public and share the public realm with everyone, both in entertainment, in politics, and I don't know, everything you can think of that's part of life, you know? So like when you see the ramps, or when you see ramps going into buildings, or if you see curbs that are sloped down, those are all part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it wasn't until until 1990 that that was mandated, that if it was a public space, you were supposed to have these accommodations, which also seems even more astounding that it took that long. But there was actually a lot of pushback against this law because some businesses said that it was going to cause them like extra, it was going to be an extra burden for them to change their setting and everything. But it's now known to be like really, it's well known if you are working in the public realm, and every workplace is supposed to abide by this Americans with Disability Act. And in the education realm, they changed the one from the 1970s into a different one, and they'd added more things to it. And yeah, so it allows all students to have reasonable accommodations who need reasonable accommodations. So do you know what accommodations are? Like the general term, like what that means?
I think you going into an explanation would be good.
Okay. So accommodations are essentially just modified services or activities that allow an individual with a disability to access an environment in an equitable way. So, to give an example, um, if you are in a high school, for instance, and you use a wheelchair, there should be ways to access the building, and you should be able to have elevators in the building. That is a reasonable accommodation. If you have a learning disability and sometimes your processing speed may be a little bit slower when it comes to reading, maybe you get extra time on a test. So these are reasonable accommodations that allow a person to access the same materials in a fair way that allows them to be successful in what they do. So if you think about people who are blind, they use Braille and or they use like audio materials.
So I'm gonna
So
summarize this in a less academic way for all of you. Essentially, it is giving you what you need so that you can succeed.
yeah,
That's essentially what it is. I know, but I'm just not going to use the same jargon that you are. I'm going to make it a little less academic. It's just giving you
I think
everything
the jargon's
you need.
important.
No, it is. But for our students, just understand like what they need. It's just what you need to succeed. And a lot of times, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And so a lot of times, this can just be more testing time for you guys. It can be a one-on-one aid. It can be somebody helping you during a particular class. It could be an extension on your homework. Those are a lot of like ones that all of you might see very frequently, more so than like a wheelchair or something a little more on a larger scale. And so when you get to college, a lot of these accommodations can follow you if you advocate for yourself. And we're going to talk about what advocating for yourself means during this as well.
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. The reason why I'm using the jargon is because the jargon is what you need for advocating for yourself. So when you go to college, if you have a disability, when you're in K through 12, you're used to having adults advocate for you. So they are having meetings with you about once a year, updating your plans, etc. When you get into a college setting, it is up to you, the student, to tell a service that's either disability services or accommodations and accessibility services. They have all different names depending on the school that you go to. So it's important that if you have one, that you learn whatever school that you go to, what the name of their department is. And then you have to go to the department and then disclose to them what you have and what do you need. And then it's the college's job to try to reasonably accommodate that. But as part of that process, you have to continually also talk to your professors. So when you have like the first day of class, in each different classes, like you get a syllabus, which I've talked to my students like what a syllabus is. Essentially, it's a guideline of what are you going to learn in this class, what are the rules of the class, and there's always a section about disabilities in it. So oftentimes at the end of class, when everyone's gone, that's when you go and talk to your professor and say, actually, I need a little bit of extra testing time, or actually I need to record audio lectures because I have an issue with like writing. So you have to also advocate for yourself with your professors, which can be scary to do if you're not used to it.
Yep. So I'm going to interrupt you, Christina, because we have a couple comments. And I just want to clarify something. So one thing Christina said was you need to figure out what the department is that is the disability services department within the college. If you don't know where to find that information, email the admissions department and they will point you in the right direction. You all should be contacting the admissions department anyway about your college application. You can contact them and also say, what is the disability office, email, phone number, who's the director, who should I contact? And the admissions department will be more than happy to send you that information. They're there to help you.
Right. And they're going to know if you don't say the exact name of it, because they understand that what you're needing is what they have. They'll just give you the name of the department, the contact information.
Yep. So we have some questions. And so somebody asked, what if you feel you need a little more help, but your parents do not think you need that help? That's a great question.
Ooh.
Who would like to take that?
So I can.
Yeah, Andy, you can say it.
I can take that. So parents may not really love this idea, but once you're 18 and you're in college, the college actually can't speak to your parents about your mental health, your um, any disabilities or services that you have received during high school or wish to receive in college. So back to what Christina was saying, in high school, you have all these people who are doing the advocating for you. Advocating is just, um, sorry, I saw a notification here that distracted me. So, advocating for yourself is just telling the appropriate people who need to know what you need, whether it be your college admissions office or your residence life office. That's a big one, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But you are going to be the one responsible for yourself and telling people what you need in college, because your parents can't. So residence life, we often talk about how important it is for students to live on campus, and that's part of the residence life experience, is part of your college experience, and it's an important one because those are the people who, they don't replace your parents, okay, but they are still looking out for you just the same way your parents did. And so they're going to, your friends and the peer workers that are in residence life are going to identify or help you identify some of the things that you're dealing with, and get you the support you need. So I think that's one of the main ways that you get what you need on a college campus.
Agreed.
Is that?
And so one thing that can also help is if you have any kind of accommodation when you are in high school, that does not automatically transfer into college. You need to request that information from your high school to be transferred to the college. You need to go talk to your guidance counselor and say, I have an IEP or a 504, or I have whatever accommodations I have. And they usually have records of all of that. And you say, can you send this to, the admissions department at this college? If you do not advocate for yourself in this kind of way, it will not be sent to the college. The colleges do not request that information, and it's not standard to just send it along. I think normally because high schools need your consent before they can send it off to a college. So that's why they don't just send it with the rest of your application. But everything Andy was saying is correct. I was an RA for 4 years. Andy's wife works in residence life. And we, the student workers, you're going to make very good relationships with your RAs in your residence halls, and they will be great advocates for you. If you feel like you have a learning disability or you need extra help, talk to those peer workers. They are usually connected with departments on campus that can help figure out what exactly you need. And they know who to talk to usually as well, and can point you in the right direction. So that's a great place to start if you don't know where else to start.
Right. And if you are still in high school, I can't say you can defy your parents per se, but if it's something that is a major concern for you, talk to your school counselor about it and explain what are your concerns around whatever you're feeling, because they have the ability to say, okay, maybe this is this, or maybe it's this, or maybe it is something that is around a learning disability. And then they'll connect you with someone who works at the school. Usually it's a school psychologist who can then talk to you about the process of testing. So that's my sister's job, is she's a school psychologist. But I mean, your parents will be contacted.
Well,
but it's just,
Can
while you're in high school.
Yes.
While you're in high school.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. Not when you're in college, but when you're in high school.
No.
Yeah.
No, your parents don't get contacted for anything while you're in college because you're an adult officially. Like,
yeah.
18, legal.
Well, your parents will get contacted for helping pay your bill, but
yes, they want their money.
Yeah. Your parents are stuck with you until you're like 28 years old.
So that's a really good summary on how to get started with all of this. How this whole process is going to start once you get to college. Do one of you two want to talk about what it's going to look like once you're in college, beyond your first year, and what you may have to do, or what your relationship may look like, how it's going to develop with the Department of Disabilities services, or anything like that? Just what the next steps are.
I think your first step is identifying that something is wrong. So if you've received services in high school, whether it's an IEP or a 504 or maybe something else, community-based, maybe counseling services, every single college campus is going to have academic support departments and mental health support departments. So you're going to have they have essentially a little hospital clinic sort of thing on every single campus, nurse's office, if you will, but they're glorified nurse's offices. So if you've got a cough, you're going to go there. If you have a mental health issue, you're going to go there. If you have an academic disability, a learning disability, you're going to talk to whoever you can. And this is where that grit word that I like to say comes into play. Christina was calling it advocacy. You're advocating for yourself. You're just identifying that something's wrong, and you're looking for solutions to fix that problem. So if you're reading your books and things just aren't making sense, that's a problem, right? You may have a processing delay or something. And if you can recognize that that is the case and talk to a professor, talk to any staff member on the college campus, they're going to point you in the best direction possible to get you some support. Okay. I think that's number one. You need to identify it yourself and then talk to the adults that do this every day on that campus.
That's a really great point. Talk to the adults. And you also brought up the mental health services and everything else on campus. And we also had a comment from somebody that said that they have to pay for their own college tuition, which I totally understand that is kind of a pain to have to pay for that. But everything that we're talking about is covered by your tuition. So all of these services are going to be free once you get to college. So don't feel like you're going to have to pay more money to get help from the Disability Services Office, or that you're going to have to pay more money to go talk to a mental health counselor. All of that is included. So go use the services. It's just like everything we do is paid for you guys. You should be using all of our services. You should be using all of your college services. And that includes getting all the free t-shirts and other handouts that colleges will give you. Get everything.
Yeah. I can tell you that I paid for school myself for undergrad and now grad school. And I have utilized when I was in undergrad, I used those services. I used, the counseling services. It was really helpful. I was a writing tutor, but sometimes I would go to other writing tutors to get assistance on papers. That wasn't necessarily an accommodation, but they do also have general tutors at schools too. So even if you don't necessarily have an accommodation, but you needed a little extra assistance, the tutoring is also free.
Yes.
So you just need to take advantage of what's on your campus, like Sammy said.
Yes.
So I just want to interject there. Christina, you really don't seem like someone who would really, quote unquote, need tutoring, right? And I know there's quite often stigmas attached with the things we're talking about. So going to see a mental health counselor, going to a tutor for extra help. maybe there is a social stigma,
Oh
or
yeah.
this idea that, oh my God, there's a problem with me. And it's not necessarily a problem, it's that you want to be better. You know, wherever you're at, you want to improve. And that's what we all should be doing. So, to the important thing is to not buy into that stigma that I have a problem, but think of it in a different way that works for you. So I want to be better, not I need to fix a problem. And I think what you said reminded me of this, that you would serve as a writing tutor, but you would also go to English tutoring, and that may be because you wanted an A plus on your paper, not an A. And
Yep.
so you you want to the tutors to say, hey, can you give this a second look for me? And it's what the world does. It's what successful people do. They ask other people to, hey, just check this over for me. I mean, we as colleagues do it all the time. Hey, can you read this over? Tell me what you think. Give me some input. Can I make it better? Yes, you can. Okay, I'm going to do that. So it doesn't mean that you're failing, or you have a serious problem, or you're not as good as someone else. It means that you are better than someone else because you are taking action on yourself and making yourself and your work better. And I think with mental health, the stigma is stronger. Um, to see a counselor means that I have a problem, and that's not necessarily the case. Yes, you're experiencing some issue, um, that's affecting you in whatever way, but you're working to solve that problem for yourself. So, um, I know there's someone close to me who recently started counseling, and this person never really seemed to need counseling, but started experiencing some little anxieties, and it only showed up like during coronavirus. Um, so, like, oh my God, the world is ending, and so these thoughts weren't stopping. So we seek out a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the counselor is just someone to talk to, someone educated on what your brain is doing, the chemicals in your body, and they help you to make that situation a little bit better. So,
Yeah, they provide clarity and they ask you questions that lead you to your own understanding, like better understanding of your thought process, which is pretty cool because you think that you know everything about yourself, but sometimes you don't know that there's like certain blind spots or there's certain little areas that are like repeated behavior patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I do think that there was a stigma. I try to be open about it so my students can see that I do feel like I have a good like understanding of myself now, but it doesn't mean that I was always like that. And that there was a service out there that was really helpful for me. And I did have some shame over it at the start when I was doing it. But it wasn't until I was actually going through the process where I was like, oh, there's really nothing to be ashamed of because it's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It
We
only bettered my relationships with others
exactly.
and myself.
We just had a comment that said that somebody goes to counseling once a week, and it is amazing. So if you need the
Oh,
counseling,
good.
please get the help.
Yeah.
We've been on for about a half hour now, or a little over. So we're gonna wrap up. So do you guys want to give your final thoughts about accessibility and accommodations, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. Um, I know I didn't really get to talk about it too much. I am going to post some links later, but if you have certain I don't say issues, but if you have certain challenges when it comes to online learning, maybe because you have a hard time looking at the screen for a long time, you can actually like download software that's free for Google Chrome that will read pages for you. Maybe listening is easier for you to understand than reading it on a screen. There's lots of software out there and technology tools that help you adapt to your situation. So I will post a few later, but I just want you to not be afraid to, you know, try new things to get what you need for education.
Any last thoughts, Andy?
No, I would absolutely reiterate that. I think sometimes we don't know what we need because we're unaware of it. I think listening to something like we've been talking about might get you thinking. And my style is to talk to people. Now I'm a pretty social person, so it's easy for me to talk to people, and I think um, my advice in that way might not work for someone who is a little shyer or doesn't like talking to people quite as much as I do. Um, but find someone that you can confide in, and find someone that in talking with them they can help point you in a direction. I think that's the best way to go, and read and listen and learn about this stuff, because as you become more aware of what's out there, you become more aware of yourself and what you need or are not getting in your daily life. Um, and that at that point you can start to say, hey, maybe I am going to seek out some support in this area of my life, and you go from there. I know for myself, I'm sure that in college I had a reading disability. I think I still do, and I've never sought out support for it. Um, I was I was able to cope and manage. Um, and of course, I got through a bachelor's degree, but there are times that I think, geez, maybe I really should seek out something to help me better cope with this so that I can be a little bit better. And I do try to read and talk about it.
Um, so while you two were talking, those are both really great summations of what we kind of talked about today. Somebody asked a question: who would we talk to about emotional support animals?
um,
Disability services.
so, yes, uh, yes, disability services would be involved, but again, that's going to be your residence life folks.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a support animal, um, that's the director of residence life that has to approve that. I know that for a fact because I've had those conversations with my wife. I believe she has to allow anything within reason up to the size of a small pony. So,
Because that's reasonable.
yeah, that probably is not going to be reasonable. Although, if you're going to Alfred University and you have a small pony, you might be able to house it at the equestrian center, which is beautiful.
Right.
You might be able to go up and see that animal all the time. But there's certainly, with therapy animals, there's a ton of consideration that needs to be given to all the rest of the students. So if you have a therapy tarantula, uh, okay, and you want to bring that to campus and you want to have it in your room, your director of residence life needs to know about it, right? It needs to be approved. It needs to have all of its certifications, and you're also going to need a certification from your doctor. So if you're thinking that you have a pet, okay, let's say you have a cat, and that cat or that dog allows you to really chill out. Okay, when you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling stressed, you just go sit on the couch, you pet that dog or that cat, and it just brings you right back down, and all is good. And so you think of that animal as a therapy pet, right? That's not a therapy pet. Okay, it's therapeutic that you are, interacting with this animal, um, but it's not classified as a therapy pet. To do so, you need to speak to a psychologist, and that psychologist needs to essentially write you a prescription. Okay, it's not actually a prescription, but in so many words, it is, and that's the most understandable way I can put it. They're going to write you a prescription for a therapy animal. You're going to get certified, or in many cases, you can get your animal certified as a therapy animal, but there's some hoops you need to jump through. Mm-hmm. And then you need to get that approved at whatever college you're going to go to, and specifically the residence life department if you're living on campus.
Good.
Anything to
good
add
summary.
to that?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything. the entire concept of having support animals at college is really new within the last like 4 to 5 years, um, in a major way. So a lot of colleges have gotten good policies in place, but they're still growing and adjusting. So work with your college and be patient if residence life takes a little bit to get that process sorted out still. But I think that was a good summary, Andy.
Yep.
So that's the last question.
I know.
Good.
I know. I've had students before that were interested in taking pets to campus, and it was the situation just as I described. You know, the animal wasn't actually a therapy animal, but the student felt the connection they had with that animal was therapeutic for the student. So, in if you're applied to a college or accepted to a college, you're thinking about making a housing deposit by May. Well, they're they're extended, but generally May 1st, right? Um, so once you make that housing deposit, you need to be talking to Residence Life. They're going to get the ball rolling for you, um, and at least let you know what you need to do. So there may be opportunity between now and the time you start school or the time you move into school to get that animal the proper certification so that they will approve it.
Mm-hmm. So that is our last question that we had, which is great. So that's all we're going to talk about for today. We'll be back tomorrow for another tea at 10. It'll be my last tea at 10 and my last day with Upward Bound. So everybody stop back for that. We'll be kind of just talking like we did last Friday, just kind of chill about whatever we want to talk about. And then Christine and Andy will be back next Monday to talk about the next topic for that tea at 10. Until then, contact your advisor or somebody at Upward Bound and let us know that you're doing okay. Seniors, please let us know that you've turned in your deposit or that you've picked a college or if you've heard back from more colleges. Just communicate with us. We are very excited to hear what's going on in your lives. Okay? And with that, we'll see you all tomorrow. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.